My movie watching habits tend to fall down a rabbit hole of actors I'm just super into for weeks or so at a time, and not long ago I found myself really wanting to support the body of work of Isla Fisher. Among these films was Confessions of a Shopaholic, which I didn't really expect to enjoy because it does come off as cheap and banal at first glance, but I found myself really enthralled by it. Shopaholic actually manages to create situations that come off as pretty tense, as you quickly understand the psychology of the character of Rebecca and why she needs this scarf, that she ties her self-worth to her belongings and feels a compulsion to make a purchase before a crucial job interview, and will go as far as to buy 100 hot dogs from a hot dog stand just to break change she needs to make said purchase, all on a time crunch before said interview. What I kinda couldn't believe I was thinking to myself was, wow, this is big, Uncut Gems vibes. The addiction, the compulsion, the chasing of self-satisfaction, the borrowed time. The conflicts aren't at the same stakes, but they're dealing with surprisingly similar strife. Look, we can't all love all movies. Maybe Uncut Gems is a little too intense and nerve-wracking for you. Maybe Shopaholic doesn't carry itself with the gravitas you're looking for. I just happen to land in the middle of the Venn diagram of enjoying both. The thing is, I never would have found out I liked Shopaholic if I didn't grit the fear of all my Letterboxd friends seeing me watching a chick flick, and that's so silly of me. This is 2021, and I've deprived myself of so many films with pretty actresses and fabulous aesthetics just because I thought I was supposed to like 300 and, Taxi Driver. I don't know. So hey, if you're ready to shed the fear of entering the world of girly movies as I have in recent years, I've decided the best way to go about that is to introduce how great some of these are by using conventional Kino as a gateway. If I can draw the thread between Uncut Gems and Shopaholic, I can win you over to anything. I realize that one could find it reductive that I'm connecting so many women-led movies to movies that have overshadowed them for years, but if you've been dodging these movies like I used to, we need some kind of bouncing off point. Consider it more of a gateway. Some would call these quality chick flicks, but I think to cover myself and how questionable that term is, I want to introduce you to what I call the world of Sleepover Kino. Like I said, Confessions of a Shopaholic was the big one that spurned this whole idea for me, because I think it depicts genuine addiction in a manner that's way more lighthearted than Uncut Gems, but still read as very genuine to me. And you never feel Rebecca is in the same danger as Howard Ratner, but that could 100% be a draw for some people. Women be shopping may be a tired punchline, but in an era where manipulation of poor impulse control is a bigger issue than ever, Shopaholic really spoke to me as a woman's capital vices actually put a ton of strain on her career and family. There's no shame in opting for the tonally lighter option, and maybe it's even a way to ease yourself as a viewer one way or the other. Another common tag for conventional Kino is the revenge flick, including my personal favorite, Kill Bill. The story of the bride as one of vengeance and personal reciprocation will always be a shade of gray, especially in a story that explores it in the way this one does. Two wrongs don't make a right can be a pretty shallow puddle to wade in, but this movie plays it just right as the bride's exploits destroys families and creates a heinous cycle in a matter so brilliantly raw that it'll almost definitely be a video on this channel at some point. Now, if that theme speaks to you and you perhaps don't want to see a man get his eyeball plucked from his skull, you may opt for You Again, in which Kristen Bell plays Marnie, who finds her brother is getting married to her high school nemesis who tortured her throughout her teenage years, spurning her to sabotage their relationship. It's easy to side with Marnie, as I think everyone has been bullied to some degree, and Kristen Bell being a cutie patootie certainly doesn't hurt. But the case for her vitriol gradually crumbles as we find her once bully doesn't even remember her, having lost her parents and devoting her efforts to charitable endeavors, making Marnie seem sympathetic and madly petty all at once. And no, Kristen Bell isn't going to engage her foe in a samurai sword fight, but the matter is muddy enough that it kept me wondering just what direction it would take, and there are moments of reflection on righteous karma that strike a similar note to aforementioned revenge movies. This is far from the most graceful movie on this rundown, but has a solid enough cast including Kristen Chenoweth, Jamie Lee Curtis, Sigourney Weaver, and Betty White among the starring Belle that it's far from the worst way to kill a couple hours with a bowl of popcorn. But let's say combat to the death isn't your bag. Maybe you prefer the sanctioned spirit of sport found in the heart-pounding underdog stories like those of Rocky Balboa. In which case, why not enjoy Bring It On, the mother of all cheerleading movies and the crowning gem of Kirsten Dunst, in my humble opinion. Between infectious dance performances and well-executed high school hijinks slapstick, what's actually brilliant about Bring It On is how it flips the underdog premise on its head, told from the POV of characters who are, for all intents and purposes, the privileged heel opposed to the characters who are really easier to root for in the form of the Clover team, and yet you wind up endeared to just about everybody involved. I can't think of many sports films that take an approach of that particular nuance. This movie also just radiates early aughts girl power, Dunst backed up by a star-studded ensemble of Eliza Dushku and Claire Kramer of Buffy fame, and the incomparable Gabrielle Union. If cheerleading isn't distant enough from conventional sports in your academy competition story, why not take it a niche further into a cappella? Pitch Perfect is the college sorority harmony battle anime you've always wanted, but what it lacks in Bring It On's surprising depth, it makes up for in unapologetic character humor and slapstick, as characters get in all-out brawls and anxiously vomit before you can remember this is a movie about singing, and pretty good singing at that. I think the riff-off trademark numbers are brilliant remixes of various hits and a lovely hallmark of each film of the trilogy. With a taste like this, I'm on a ride. The notion that they made 3 Pitch Perfect movies might make some bristle, and of course I saw all 3, and while Pitch Perfect 2 definitely falls into lame sequel syndrome, Pitch Perfect 3 is the ultimate resignation of rooted dignity, as all logic flies out the window and the Barden Bellas, I shit you not, deal with terrorists on exploding boats. Maybe it's the lame theater kid in me, or the pathetic Anna Kendrick simp, but these movies always bring out the performative spirit that got my blood pumping when I was under stage lights years ago, which is an element I realize will make or break the appeal for a lot of people depending on how badly that last sentence made you want to shove me in a locker. But there's a lot of talent here flexing on a lot of different skills, and I heartily endorse it. Robert De Niro has made his mark in a wide range of revered movies, largely in the gangster genre. Most recently, The Irishman, a movie where his long history and tenure as an actor blends in a metatextual way to speak to his character of an aging gangster. Though what I've really fallen in love with is its soft-serve equivalent, Nancy Meyers' The Intern, where De Niro plays a long-retired widow who endeavors an internship for a trendy fashion blog to stave off his boredom. Now, a fish-out-of-water story of a boomer imparting wisdom on those wacky millennials may seem eye-roll-worthy, but the movie plays out with a lot of sympathy and never feels like it's punching down on any area. I recall checking this movie out on a whim with no real expectations and being blown away by how much I loved it. The organic character work and endearing slice of life quickly made it one of my all-time favorites. A kitschy scene of Anne Hathaway helping Robert De Niro set up his Facebook page, offset by De Niro basically assembling a heist to sneak into the home of his boss's mother to delete an email she didn't mean to send, could so easily create an uneven and vacant affair, but there's an earnestness to this movie that pulls me every time. But let's say I've misread your affinity for crime, and it's not the unruly criminals you want to follow, but the upstanding bolsterers of the law who fight crime with only the judge and jury and their own wits to defend themselves. What if you crave a court drama, but something a little more pink than 12 Angry Men? I think you know where I'm going with this. In fact, you'd be downright blonde not to. Legally Blonde, at that. This is the big one, the movie that made Reese Witherspoon for a time the undisputed queen of the chick flick. Her performance is no small part of what makes Elle Woods one of the all-time great movie characters, taking every instinct to be apologetic for feminine qualities in a field like law and stuffing it in the trash in favor of wielding her prim pedigrees as her strongest weapons. When not in awe of Elle's impeccable choice in bright pink wardrobe, I'm equally so in how effortlessly she wins the day, not by stifling what makes her herself, but by embracing it and bringing a necessary element to the courtroom, as her knowledge of cosmetics and socialite proclivities make her a force to be reckoned with.
Because isn't it the first cardinal rule of perm maintenance that you're forbidden to wet your hair for at least 24 hours after getting a perm?
Yes.
Legally Blonde is a very pretty movie aesthetically, but it's all at once stunning and empowering in what the characters are fighting against and how they overcome it. It's really a no-brainer that's become such a household name.
What, like it's hard?
Contrary to a character with disarming intelligence, our next exhibit is one who's, well, clueless. Films like American Psycho inspect how high class and prestige can poison one's brain to completely lose touch. But a less bloody alternative we readily have, Alicia Silverstone's cultural touchstone, if you consider a distilled embodiment of the early 2000s, a culture worthy to touch. Clueless has maybe some of the most cutting and memorable dialogue of any film on this list, revolving around the fact that Cher Horowitz feels so genuine in her flaws. I've always said that a truly convincing character is even harder to write and impressive to pull off if they happen to be a bit absent-minded, and Cher's distinct lease on life breathes this mentality effortlessly. Cher may also be the only character to hold a candle to Elle Woods in the department of early aughts chick flick drip. That yellow plaid is iconic. For my last selection, I want to take a look at a recent trend I've seen in reflections of the afflicted condition, especially that of mental illness and dementia in movies like The Father, which can be a horrifying topic to cover, and one would think in poor taste in the peers of movies I've covered here, but it's all pulled off beautifully by 50 First Dates. Adam Sandler and Drew Barrymore have such incredible chemistry, maybe so in the creation of my favorite romantic dynamic of any movie, and it's astonishing that they do so as characters who meet for the first time every single time they wake up. Despite the lofty, some might call gimmicky premise, there's a lot of atmosphere and character to this movie, and factors the characters have to overcome. It's surprisingly well thought out that way and full of sweet moments and set pieces, from the arduous routine of Lucy's father and brother to the absolutely stunning finale. The ending of this movie was always what impressed me the most. Considering this is an Adam Sandler flick, it'd be so easy to have a coconut clonk Drew Barrymore on the head and fix her affliction, but we have a bittersweet, grounded close to an honestly gorgeous story I've always adored. So if you want to be a chick flick embracing Chad like myself, you officially have your homework, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. The likes of Waitress, The Devil Wears Prada, the list goes on, perhaps into a second video on the subject. But that's for another day. In the meantime, I'm gonna walk to work to the Pitch Perfect soundtrack.